Howdy, Immortallium here, and welcome to my top 10 shonen manga. Basically, my good friend Archangel Manga, he made two videos recently, top 10 shonen manga, top 15 actually, seinen manga. And I was watching them, I enjoyed them, they gave me a lot of great ideas, and I was kind of wondering to myself, why don't I make my own ones? Except instead of just top 10 shonen, top 10 seinen, I also include shoujo and josei, so basically the whole spread of the demographics. And plus it will give me an opportunity to talk about some pretty awesome series that I don't generally get to talk about. So that's kind of my idea. So yeah, if you guys think that that's a good idea, just simply, comment and all that. But anyway, let's begin. So, at number 10, we have, this one I started in the last year, I think, and I'm really enjoying it. It's called Ranma Half. And basically, it's about this boy, Ranma, and he is brought to kind of this dojo, and there's a lot of awkwardness because he's engaged to one of the girls at this dojo, but he got a curse where basically every time he gets I'm just trying to recall which order it is now, cold water, hot water, anyway, he turns into a girl, and then vice versa, the other version will turn him back. And it's a really, really funny series, full of wacky characters, some very crisp and nice artwork from Rumiko Takahashi. And overall, it's just a fantastic comedy series. I've only gotten the first 4 omnibuses, so that's essentially the 8 Japanese volumes. And I think there's is it 38 Japanese volumes? So I have hardly gotten into Ranma Half, but already I just simply want to say that I absolutely really am enjoying this series. There's a few bits here and there, of course, that I'm not keen on. I think the pervert character in this series feels maybe a bit too strong, that's kind of a bit off-putting a bit. But overall, I can definitely recommend check out Ranma Half. I'm having a great time at it. After that, actually, another Shonen Sunday series. I know, I'm already recommending 2 Shonen Sunday series. This next one is a series called Cross Game, and this is my favorite sports manga. I'm not much of a sports person, let me tell you, but I absolutely really enjoyed this manga. It's about baseball, and essentially our lead character, he works in he lives in a sports shop, selling sports equipment. And actually there's some really funny bits at the beginning where he's trying to sell sports equipment to his schoolmates because he'll get a bigger allowance from his parents. But he also has this friendship with a group of girls from this other family. Actually, these are a group of girls, and in particular he's into this girl right over here. And it's a really sweet, emotional story with some very interesting artwork. The artist for this, Mitsuru Adachi, he's famous for another manga series called Touch, I think it is, which is supposed to be really good. Some people actually consider it better than the series, and I would love to read it, but it's not available in English, so, that's so sad. So I really do hope that more people pick this up, and maybe it'll convince Viz, maybe we should get more Mitsuru Adachi manga translated. But anyway, my point is, I really did enjoy this series. The one thing I would say, this now is probably what a lot of people dread when they come across sports manga, and that is, there are some moments in this series where I was a bit confused during the games because I'm not familiar with baseball. So, in particular, I remember the second omnibus, there was this one, really big match happening, and I was kind of, for a couple of chapters, I was kind of scratching my head and kind of going, what the hell's happening here? I'm kind of confused. But overall, I would definitely recommend checking this out. You do not need to know baseball in order to enjoy it. It will probably help you enjoy it, but I definitely can recommend this to, most people. It is a really good series. After that, we are finally leaving the Shonen Sunday titles and moving into something that actually, some people are kind of confused as to whether this is a shonen or a seinen. I believe that at the very least, the first couple of volumes were published shonen, so I'm going to count it as a shonen title, and that is Higurashi When They Cry. Now, horror manga, I have a couple of horror titles, like for example Uzumaki, which is a seinen, this, which is a shonen, and I'm fairly sure I have at least one other horror title. I can't quite think what it is now, but point is, this is literally the only manga that has ever creeped me out. Basically, our lead character, he moves to this town, and this town, at first it seems, pretty cool, pretty okay, great locals, and, while there isn't that much to do in the town, he has great friends who keep him entertained. But as time goes on, it seems like there's something weird happening in the background, something sinister, and as all these various supernatural incidents start occurring, he starts to get really freaked out and starts realizing that his life is in danger. So I'm just going to say about the series, I have not watched the anime. There is the game coming out on Steam soon, which I definitely want to check out. The original games that all this is based on. So this is actually an adaptation of a visual novel, but so far I really, really do enjoy the series. Basically, I just better point this out because some people get really confused about this. The true number, like the true volume number, is at the top, and then you have the arc number down here. So, for example, this one is the very first volume. I might get you another example, actually. This one, which is the second volume, the Time Killing arc, it is actually volume 8 of the whole series, but it is only volume 2 of the Time Killing arc. And some people really do make that mistake. Like, they see, like, a big 2 on the side, and they think, oh, it's the second volume, only to realize it's, like, volume 11 or something like that, So, that does happen. So beyond that little bit of confusion, I will also say that some people are a little put off of the manga version of this series because of the fact that the artists change for each arc, but I really like it. It gives it a very kind of dynamic feel, and just if you're kind of wondering yourself, how does that work? I should also point out it's kind of a Groundhog Day feel to it, where the same kind of story keeps happening over and over again, but there's lots of little differences each time. And actually, a lot of people in Japan, when Higurashi came out, spent huge amounts of time, discussing with each other, all the various possibilities of, the mysteries that had happened in the series. So overall, I'll recommend the series very much. Again, I've only read the first 8 volumes of it, so I really do need to catch up. I've been kind of holding off for a while because I finished off all the question arc volumes, and I kind of felt a bit complete after that. But I definitely do want to get back. I want to find out, what happened in those arcs, etc., etc. So I definitely recommend people to check out Higurashi. It is a really, really good series. After that, now this one, I know it's really, really popular, but I have to say it's not like it's popular without reason. It is a really, really good series, and that is Attack on Titan. Now, Attack on Titan, I am really enjoying. I remember enjoying it more at the beginning, I will say. As of late, there's been some kind of weird revelations that, haven't meshed too well with me. Not only that, the characters' development seem a bit stagnant at this point, so that is kind of, docking a few marks off of the series, but definitely, I love the artwork. Mainly, like, in the action sequences, when they're standing still, sometimes there's a bit of proportion issues, but that's mainly in the first several volumes, and after that it works well, and it looks pretty good even when they're standing still. But the art works beautifully in action sequences. Not only that, the storytelling is very strong, the constant revelations, and, again, this is another series that lots of people have had major discussions about, who are the Titans and all. Actually, speaking of which, it's such a popular series, I almost forgot to actually tell you what it's about. So basically, it's set in the future, and or past, actually. I don't think we've been told that, but anyway. And Titans have wiped out the majority of the human population. There is a kind of a country, a kingdom essentially, that has survived the Titan invasions due to erecting huge walls. Like, there's 3 massive walls that the population are able to hide behind. But one day, this huge colossal titan shows up and destroys, like he makes a hole in one of the walls, and you know, all hell breaks loose as the population are trying to flee. And we are following a character called Eren Yeager who wants revenge, and I won't spoil why he wants revenge, but he really, really wants it. So I really do enjoy the series. I think there's some very, you know, strong drama, you know, as I said, great artwork, and all that jazz. As I said, the niggles, particularly as of late. So yeah, I'm just gonna say, definitely check out, jump on that Attack on Titan bandwagon if you have yet to do so. After that, we have another very popular series called Fullmetal Alchemist. Now, Fullmetal Alchemist is, of course, the story of the Elric brothers, Edward and Alphonse, who commit a kind of a crime in the alchemist world. Their mom dies and they want to bring her back through human transmutation, but that's banned in alchemical circles, so they attempt to do it by themselves, and it goes horrifically wrong for them, and essentially they're trying to redeem themselves after that. But not only that, there's some kind of, you know, a big conspiracy happening in the country that they are, and it turns out that, you know, alchemy and, you know, the forces at work are actually a lot more sinister than anyone expected it to be. So again, it's a really, really good series. Very strong artwork from Harumu Arakawa, and of course a whole range of very lovable and likable characters. Like, for example, Edward is a fantastic protagonist. His brother Alphonse is very endearing. A couple of kind of weak links. Rinri, you know, the potential love interest for Edward, is a bit on the weak side of character development. Although, to be honest, she does serve more of a purpose in this story than most other romantic leads do in other shonen series. So that is definitely a positive. So overall, and there's some very good action sequences as well. I should point out it's a shonen action series, so it is really, really good. Fullmetal Alchemist, I definitely recommend you to pick it up. You can actually get it in this big box where they have all 27 volumes of it and a light novel. The light novel itself isn't that great, to be honest, but the manga itself is definitely worth picking up, so I definitely recommend it to you. After that, we have definitely my favorite ongoing, well, quote-unquote ongoing Shonen Jump series, and that is Hunter x Hunter. Now, I did quote-unquote ongoing because it's actually on hiatus, and it's known for being on hiatus very frequently. But basically, our lead character, Gon Freaks, basically his father is a hunter, and he wants to follow in his father's footsteps, as well as to actually find his father and, you know, talk to him about, you know, why his father left him when he was a child, and, you know, all that jazz. So he goes off to take the hunter exam, and he comes across a couple of other characters, Kurapika, Leo Rio, Killua, and overall, this series is so much fun. Like, it's just really, really entertaining and enjoyable. To be honest, okay, like, I might get a bit of flack for this. I've read a bit of One Piece, and One Piece isn't on this list. One Piece is an enjoyable enough series, but I don't really see what the hype is for One Piece. This feels more to me like what One Piece should have been. You know, it's got really engaging characters, it's got crazy action and stories and over-the-topness, and the artwork itself is a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. I mean, I like the art style, and, you know, the paneling and all that, but there are times when, you know, characters distort a bit and there's a lack of detail and all that. Possibly due to the fact that Yoshihiro Togashi is quite frequently ill and also has little to no assistance. So I will, you know, admit that the artwork isn't as good as it could be quite frequently, but the actual style of art itself, as well as the paneling itself, are great. So I wouldn't let that detract from my enjoyment of the series. So definitely, I highly recommend that you pick up Hunter x Hunter. Just keep in mind, you don't need to rush to catch up on this series because, yeah, I don't know when it'll come back, and once it comes back, it'll probably go again relatively fast. So, yeah, just take your time and enjoy the series. Enjoy the ride. After that, we actually have an Osamu Tezuka title, and in fact I will say that this is my favorite shonen Osamu Tezuka, and that is Buddha. Now, Buddha I had to check in order to see if it was a shonen. I wasn't too sure, but after a little bit of research I was able to confirm that it was in fact a shonen series. The reason I wasn't able to confirm whether or not it was a shonen or a seinen at the time was because of the fact that at the time Osamu Tezuka drew this, he was doing a lot of seinen works, and there's a lot of moments where it does feel quite seinen. So I will say that it does definitely have a feel, but it is definitely a shonen. If you hadn't guessed from the title, it's to do with Buddha, you know, the founder of Buddhism. And it's set over many, many volumes. The Western editions are 8 volumes, but I think in Japan it's like 15. Actually starts out before the birth of Buddha and goes up to the death of Buddha. So we kind of see the entire life of Buddha, you know, like the coming, you know, the kind of prophecies and predictions of a coming kind of savior. And, you know, once he's born and, you know, how he achieves enlightenment and all that. And we also come across a lot of other characters that are really, really interesting and intriguing characters like Devadatta and... yeah, I really like Narudatta, I remember. We don't see too much of Narudatta throughout the entire story, but he's a very interesting character for when he's there. And of course, Buddha himself is actually a really, really interesting protagonist. It's kind of strange. I remember being afraid that once Buddha achieved enlightenment, that kind of everything would fall into place too much for him. But simply because he achieved enlightenment doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't get angry or upset at times. He still does. So that does help, you know, to lend a lot of drama to the story. It just simply means that he understands how the universe worked and all that. So not only that, but the paneling and artwork in this series is absolutely superb. The one thing that I've heard, like, this is either a positive or negative, this depends, but there are a lot of break the fourth wall moments. Like, there's a bit where, you know, I can't remember the exact context of the scene, but there's a bit where in a palace, you know, they're talking, and one of them starts talking about, you know, drawing manga, and one of them's like, drawing manga in India? There's also a bit like, I think, where one goes to like a McDonald's or something. So it does feel a bit weird at points, that kind of strange humor, breaking the fourth wall, and, you know, modern references, etc., particularly considering this is like 500 BC or whatever. But, you know, I personally think that the comedy adds a lot of charm to the series and, you know, kind of helps prevent it from becoming a bit too serious and a bit too, I don't want to say depressing, but it doesn't get that depressing, but it is a very sad series at many points. So I really do recommend Buddha. If you want to start an Osamu Tezuka shonen work, Buddha is a pretty good choice, and I believe all the vertical editions are still in print and gonna receive a reprint, I think, at some point, unlike a lot of the other Osamu Tezuka titles released by Vertical. So that's basically I have 3 more shonen series to go. So at number 3, my top 3 shonen manga. This one is Azumanga Daioh. Now, Azumanga Daioh is my favorite comedy manga of all time. I'm just going to simply say that. It is hilarious. Basically, it is set over a 3-year period, high school period, and we followed a couple of girls, Sakaki, Chiyo, Tomo, Yomi, and Osaka. Although if I recall correctly, Osaka isn't Osaka's real name, but point is, it's kind of just a slice of life comedy series. There's a couple of other characters, teachers mainly, but mainly it's focusing around the girls, and just kind of, you know, just them, you know, kind of having fun. And, you know, for example, we have Chiyo, who is 10 years old, but such a genius that she's moved into high school, and that of course creates a lot of very awkward situations. You know, like there was a bit I remember where really funny, where because she's in high school, she can actually get a part-time job, but people are kind of like showing up at the restaurant and they're seeing this 10-year-old girl behind the counter, and they're kind of wondering, whoa, what's happening here? You know, why is a 10-year-old girl behind the counter? And people have different reactions. You know, some women thought it was cute, some men thought it was weird, etc., etc. But And like it is pretty much the only manga, I will be honest, that I can open up any page and laugh at. You know, there are very few pages that won't make me laugh in this series. I'm just such a very enjoyable series. Now, the art is a bit on the simple side, and of course, because the majority of the manga is in 4 koma, which is basically that it starts at the top, works its way to the bottom to a punchline. Not exactly the most dynamic paneling. In fact, it's very basic, but it's a really, really enjoyable series. And I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for a comedy series, as well as maybe to understand a bit more about the culture of Japan, there's a lot of translation notes in this, then this series is highly recommended to you. At number 2, we have Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin. Now, I remember when I first started this series, I thought it was a pretty good series, but I wasn't 100% sure about it, particularly due to the fact I'd watched Gundam Seed beforehand, and this story was very similar to it. But over time, there's been a lot of differences between Gundam Seed and Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin, and there are some really, really awesome characters, in particular Sayla and Char. Like, I absolutely love the character development of those two. And which is why I was really happy recently when I was reading the past arc, because the past arc is just fantastic. Not only that, but the artwork itself is beautiful. So, just to kind of give you a quick run story, basically we start out at a colony. There's being a war fought between the colonies and the Earth Federation. The colonies want to achieve independence, and they've done a lot of horrific things in order to try to achieve it. We do go to a colony at the beginning where essentially they are neutral in the war, where the Federation is carrying out some experiments, some tests, in order to produce new mobile suits that will help to turn the tide of the war. And we're introduced to Amuro Ray, who is our lead character. He becomes the pilot of the mobile suit, the mobile suit that you see on the cover, and he has to fight against the other forces, the Zeon forces, led generally by Char, the Red Comet, who is a particularly skilled commander and has a very tragic past. So this, such a great manga. It's very much a war manga. I would call it a war manga more than a sci-fi manga. There's a lot of drama, a lot of tragedy, a lot of political intrigue and instability. And the artwork itself is also fantastic. The mangaka who did this worked on the original series as, I know he was an animator, but I also think he did some character designs and everything. But his artwork in this is absolutely gorgeous. Not only that, Vertical has released it in a beautiful hardcover edition with the the color pages intact. The paper quality is actually glossy, so it's not like the rough paper. It's actually like perfectly white and everything. And there's also like a lot of extras in each of the volumes. So overall, I would definitely recommend that if you pick up Gundam. I remember there was a question someone asked Vertical the other day whether or not they'll ever do a paperback edition of Gundam The Origin, and Vertical have said not yet. Not their intention at the moment. Not off the boards, but for the foreseeable future, no. So definitely, if you're waiting for a paperback edition, don't. Just pick up the hardcovers, they're well worth it. And finally, my number 1 shonen manga of all time. Now this, I'm going to say I have a bit of bias. I'll just show what it is first of all, and it is Death Note. Death Note is the story of Light Yagami. He gets his hand on a Death Note where if he writes in the person's name, how they'll die, when they'll die, etc., that person will actually die. Usually by heart attacks, but he can also like specify deaths and everything. And he kind of makes an alliance with a Shinigami called Ryuk, who dropped the Death Note into the world in order to have a bit of fun. The Shinigami world is a bit uninteresting at the moment. And Light decides to take advantage. He's a boy genius, and he starts wiping out the criminals of the world. But there is a detective called L, Mysterious, who makes it his mission to track down Kira, which is the name that Light has taken for himself, and to bring justice. So, just want to say that the reason that there's a bit of bias here is because of the fact that this is the first manga series I ever read straight through. I bought the box set, the Death Note box set, and I just read, volumes 1 to 12 straight through, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the story, I loved the characters. The artwork is gorgeous. I mean, it's from Takeshi Obata, who's one of my favorite manga artists. So the artwork is absolutely beautiful. Hard to imagine it's in a weekly format because the art has so much detail and style and everything. So, from an artistic perspective, highly, highly recommended. From the character's perspective, highly, highly recommended. Again, one criticism of Tsugumi Oba, which I would agree with, is that the female characters are a bit weak. I would agree with that criticism of Tsugumi Oba, but I wouldn't let that interfere with my enjoyment of the manga. The only other thing I guess I should point out is that the second half of Death Note has gotten a lot of criticism because of, the certain changes, spoilers of course, so I won't say, what those are, but a lot of people did say that they didn't like the second half, and I will say that while I didn't enjoy the second half as much as I did the first half, I still think it's way, way better than a lot of other manga out there. So even though it doesn't reach the heights of the first half, I would still highly recommend that people read the second half. It's really, really good. So Death Note is my number 1. So that is my top 10 shonen manga. Now, I just want to stress, this is my top 10, so if you, disagree with it, that's fair enough. I can understand. Everyone has different opinions. And, hopefully you guys found something that's really interesting in this lot. And I intend, I don't know when I will do it, but I do intend for my next video to be the top 10 seinen. And then after that I'll do like top 10 shoujo, and I'm not sure how much josei, because I won't be able to do a top 10. I'll explain more about it once I get to that. But, yeah, hopefully this video has been very useful to you guys. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.